Hello everybody, it's Max from Traction Dynamics here, making a little video. I wanted to kind of do a little show and tell with the electronic damping adjustment that comes on the new 2018 Honda Goldwing Tour models. This is kind of one that people have never had really had any this type of feature on a bike before, and they're curious what it is and how it works. So if you were to have aftermarket shock absorbers that had manual adjustments on them, like you've probably seen on lots of different kinds of shocks, they would call rebound adjustment and compression adjustment. You would physically reach with your hand or take a little tool and turn an adjuster in some way, screwing an adjuster in or out to increase the damping force in the shock itself, so make it harder to compress and make it extend more slowly, or make it easier to compress and extend more rapidly. So what Honda's done with this bike is just kind of put a little fancy motor where there would normally be a knob, and so it's making the adjustment for you remotely from the dashboard. And the way that kind of happens is in a shock. If this is the shaft, that's the shaft. Up the center of the shaft is a needle, and the needle is blocking a hole at the very top of the shock, and oil passes by the needle and flows out this hole on the side. Sitting on this ledge right here is the piston that's pumping up and down inside the shock. So the older Goldwing didn't have this needle in the center of it. It was just a solid rod. So they've got a bore up it here, and then on the bottom you can kind of see these little electronic gizmos here. That's the older Goldwing shock for reference. I'll show you what that looks like inside. When you kind of pop it open, this is the little motor right there, and I'll show you a picture. There it is, kind of loose from a shock. Where my mouse is here, that little plunger, which is let's say the tip of this right here, you can see by size is the size of smaller than a pencil. This part here, bigger than a pencil, kind of thing, just for reference. And so what happens is when you change the button, this black assembly moves out and pushes on that needle, or moves back and lets the needle come back to let more or less oil flow through the shock. So here's the actual part, a little close up. When I rode the bike and went through the modes, I couldn't really tell that anything was changing. So I was kind of surprised at that. But once we took it apart, we kind of can see why it's not having much effect. The needle, the tip of the needle, let me see if I can get it in the video here. It may be hard to see in real life here. It's only, the tip of the needle is only 1.5 millimeters tall. It's very small, and in the world of needles and seats, just like in a carburetor mixture screw or whatever, the greatest effect occurs as the needle approaches its seat. So what we found is there's 4 driving modes on the new Goldwing, and the 4 driving modes are rain, economy, sport, and tour. And Honda put them in a sequence on purpose because the adjuster actually doesn't have 4 positions, it has 3. But what they've done is 2 of the 4 modes share the same position. So the way it works is, in the rain mode, the adjuster is collapsed, the needle is fully open, and the shock has the least amount of damping control, little or none, very, very little control at that point, or it's very light control for a rain. Then when you go to Econ, this adjuster moves halfway out in its range and puts, theoretically some more damping in there. And then when you go to sport, it goes on out the rest of the way, and that's the most damping that you'll experience. And then when you go to tour, it comes halfway back. And so then when you go to rain, it goes back. So it just repeats that process in and out. So there's 3 positions, but they're effectively cycling in a fashion that lets it have, in the 4 engine modes. So there's technically 3 suspension, let's call it feelings, if you will, or adjustments. But now, in applied real world, application of it, I couldn't really tell it was doing anything. And in particular, in the rain, econ, and tour modes. In sport mode, there is kind of a perception that it maybe slows down a little bit, or gives it a little more control. So, but part of that is just this, the range of it is not very much, and the needle's very tiny. As far as its shape and what it does. So that's kind of a look into your electronic damping adjustment. Oh, and now there's already a contingent of people, and who I'm a subscriber to, that don't understand why Honda has linked the suspension and the feeling of the bike to an engine mode. So most people like their bike to behave and feel a certain way, and would not want that tied to an engine mode. And for instance, to make it even more clear, if you were to select modes and it changed your radio station and your windshield height. So say I put it to sport mode, and it automatically made my windshield go to the lowest position and put heavy metal radio station on my radio. And then I go to touring, and the windshield goes up all the way and turns on country music, and I have to listen to country music. And when I go to econ mode, the thing goes to soft rock, and I have to listen to soft rock. It's just the settings shouldn't be tied to the engine performance. It doesn't make any sense to me. So anyway, it's that's how Honda thought they would do it. And anyway, so that's how they did it. So this same kind of parts are in the front and rear shock. And actually, I think I got a picture of the shock kind of blown apart here somewhere. Let me go to desktop and front shock. Nope, hang on a second. Let's go to desktop, rear shock. Nope, I'm sorry. I guess I haven't put it in here yet. I'll put it all the way there yet. Anyway, so there again is the rear shock assembly out of the bike. You can see that adjuster and the wire there that plugs into the factory bike. And there's the preload adjuster for the rear shock. Not related to the electronic damping adjustment system. So it's important to kind of clarify the two. So what you're used to if you've had previous Goldwings, there's a button on the dash, and that is putting more or less spring preload on the rear shock. It is electric because it has an electric motor. But it is not electronic suspension adjustment. It's actually an electric motor here. Oops, what did that do? Hang on one second. All right, touchscreen. So it's an electronic motor here that pushes on this cup full of oil, pushes a piston into it, forces oil down that line and into this donut at the top of the shock. Then the donut expands and puts more or less pressure on the spring on the shock. That is a totally separate thing, but that's just adjusting the initial pressure on the rear spring of the shock. The new feature is actually controlling the way the damping unit itself works, how fast the suspension responds effectively. So anyway, there's a look into the new electronic adjustment on your new tour models only. Those features are not available on the standard model Goldwings, so the trunkless one. All right, so thanks for listening to my videos. I'll try and get more up as we learn more things and show you how things work with the new bike. So talk to you soon. Bye.